Very Bad Wizards is a podcast with a philosopher, my dad, and a psychologist, Dave Pizarro, having an informal discussion about issues in science and ethics. Please note that the discussion contains bad words that I'm not allowed to say, and knowing my dad, some very inappropriate jokes.
They say time is the fire in which we burn. Right now, Captain, my time is running out.
The great boss has spoken! Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain!
Who are you? Who are you? A very bad man.
I'm a very good man. Good man. They think deep thoughts, and with no more brains than you have. Pay no attention to that man! Anybody can have a brain.
You're a very bad man.
I'm a very good man. Just a very bad wizard.
Welcome to Very Bad Wizards. I'm Tamler Summers from the University of Houston. Dave, pour one out for The Late Show with Stephen Colbert, which was canceled yesterday or 2 days ago or whatever. It's all an illusion anyway. Did you watch a single second of Colbert's show while it was on the air?
I don't think so. maybe like Nikki pointed her phone at me just to like show me a segment for a second, but no, I'm not missing out on anything.
No, I don't think I watched a single second of it. Like not even like a clip of it.
Did you used to watch the old one, like on whatever?
Oh yeah, like after
Comedy
Jon
Central
Stewart
one or whatever. Yeah, exactly.
No, I never really I didn't love that shtick, but like I could see why other people might, but it just wasn't. It's not my style of humor.
Right. I like the guy more than Jon Stewart. Like I found Jon Stewart to be a little too smug for my tastes. And there was something a little disarming about his character, Stephen Colbert, the dim-witted, slightly conservative pundit that he played.
Yeah.
But,
yeah. I think you had to like actually feel some affection for the character if you were going to like it.
But really what I care about is if they come for Stephen Colbert, they're going to come for us.
That's what I'm worried about too. Yeah.
We're next. Clearly, America's eyes are all on us.
Yeah. Like the Trump administration is going like one down, one to go.
They're going through Patreon. They're like requesting subpoenaed Patreon.
Q&As are going to be all part of the public record now. Well, I stand by every single thing that we've said, except like anything I probably said about like moral psychology in the first 3 years.
You've disavowed.
Yeah.
Well, see, you've dissed science, and what you didn't know is its power to solve philosophical problems.
That's right. And so in the first segment, we're going to be talking about a new study or a video that is describing a study that measured qualia. The thing that us stupid philosophers thought you couldn't do, well, they just went ahead and did it. They measured qualia. And Sabine Hossenfelder is going to tell us all about it. And then in the second segment, we'll talk about a Borges essay, which I think is a first for us. Yeah, we're going to talk about in his essay, A New Refutation of Time. In Spanish, what would that be?
Una nueva refutación del tiempo, I think.
That sounds so much better. So should we dive in? So this is a video. I think this is all just trying to punish us for saying in our last AUA that, you know, it's a lot better right now with people talking about neuroscience and what it can do and it can't do.
I know. It's famous last words. So you had never encountered Sabine Hossenfelder before, is that right?
No.
I don't know that much about her, but she has a very popular YouTube page where she discusses physics. She's a physicist by training, who studies like gravitational waves, you know, something like pretty hardcore. But I think she's just become more of a YouTube, like a content creator than scientists. Yeah, I don't know if she's academically affiliated still, but I don't think I'd ever watched a complete video of hers. I don't think I will again.
Well, unless we are scrambling for an opening segment the day before we're supposed to record. But that'll never happen again. So, yeah. Should we play it and then we can kind of comment on it as it goes along?
Yes, this is like a DVD extra.
Yeah.
Is your red the same as my red? You look at a red apple, I look at a red apple. We both wonder why we're looking at red apples, but we probably agree that the apple is red. Then again, how do we know our experiences are actually the same?
So she starts with the problem, like the inverted spectrum problem, like how do I know that your red is my red? Which is fine, it's on good ground. Like, it feels
Good
really
question.
impossible to know if your red is actually the same. Okay, so far so good. I was optimistic. I was like, why is Tamler sending me this? This seems reasonable.
For a long time, the answer was, we don't know and we won't ever know. Philosophers called it qualia, and it was supposedly something that science can't test. But scientists just went and tested it.
Okay,
Yeah,
stop.
okay.
Stop. This is so funny. This question of like whether your red is the same as my red. She says philosophers called that qualia, which is that's not what
Not
qualia
quite, yeah.
are, the qualitative experiences in the head, but fine. And then she says, and it was supposedly something you can't test, but scientists just went ahead and tested it. Whoa.
You'd think they would have tried it before, but
Why didn't they think of that?
sometimes it takes a real renegade maverick spirit to be the first to measure qualia.
This whole time they were just like, no, we can't test it. And if just
It was
at any point they could have just tested it.
It's the academic system had been keeping people down, and the gatekeepers were like, no one will ever test qualia.
The idea that qualia are unmeasurable comes largely from the work of philosophers like Thomas Nagel and David Chalmers. In his famous essay, What is it like to be a bat? Nagel argued that there is something fundamentally inaccessible about another creature's subjective experience. David Chalmers later expanded this idea with what he called the hard problem of consciousness, which is the idea that even if you understand all the physical processes in the brain, you still haven't explained why experience feels the way it does. This philosophical view made qualia seem almost mystical, cut off from scientific investigation. I've always thought this is bullshit. You can measure what's going on in the brain, therefore you can study what experience means in scientific terms.
So she says you can measure what is going on in the brain, therefore you can study what experience means in scientific terms. What is she saying there? Like, I don't even know how to interpret that sentence.
No, I don't either. No, at all. I mean, it's just like she's completely missed the point. Like
I also think like she throws in like things like the hard problem, qualia, like she doesn't connect it correctly with the other words that she's using them in the frame with. But okay.
You cannot, of course, yourself experience the same as some other person or bat or carrot because you don't have the same brain. But give it some time and we can find the next closest approximation to someone else's experience that works on your circuits.
I think it's like if our brains are doing the same thing, we can assume we're having the same experience.
Like, I guess? Or is she saying that if we find someone whose brain has similar activation as yours in other ways, then we can look at those brains and compare them to yours, which I think is kind of what they're doing in the paper that she's referring to, which is they got people to rate a whole bunch of different shades of red and then use some way of like finding whose ratings were the most similar, and then looked at those brains or some measure of neural activity given those similarity ratings. But again, it's like completely missing the point.
It's completely missing the point because
it almost feels like an AI wrote a script for her because it's
does
not
feel
connecting
like
the
that.
dot. Yeah.
And in a fascinating new study that just came out a few weeks ago, scientists say that it might actually be possible to measure qualia, or at least compare them, in a meaningful way. The authors of the new paper recruited 35 participants and showed them different colors while measuring their brain activity using fMRI. Their goal was to find out if the experience of specific colors, like red or blue, creates consistent patterns in the brain. They compared the brain signals across participants and indeed found similarities that matched the perception of the same colors.
Okay, so she's describing the study where they got 35 people, put them in an MRI scanner, and showed them different colors to see if the perception of those colors created quote unquote consistent patterns in the brain. And then they just find similarities, like when you're looking at a shade of red that's the same as what I'm looking at, our brains are activating in a similar way. Like, as far as I can tell, that's it. That's the finding.
Yeah. But then if you show a colorblind person that their brains aren't responding in a similar way to the ones that show color. Yeah.
Incredible.
And that's the whole study. They've measured qualia.
This is the first time scientists have objectively measured qualia, subjective experiences, by identifying neural signatures that are the same for different people seeing the same color.
What have they measured? They've just looked at brain activity that is correlated to like what the people report to see, right?
Yes, I'm struggling to conceive of what first this could possibly be, given that there's like at this point hundreds of thousands of papers where they're giving people stimuli and seeing regions of the brain activated in around the same place.
Right. So what like possible like additional thing could be said here that makes this distinctive and relevant to the hard problem?
Yeah.
In other words, they demonstrated that your red is, at least structurally and approximately, likely indeed the same as my red.
So that's the key thing, right? That we have established, if our brains are firing in the same ways, that your red and my red are the same. But like, obviously not, right? Like,
no. And like, I think as some people were pointing out in the comments of the video itself, it's like you need some certainty even that like you're looking at the right part of the brain. Like it could very well be that there's similar firing in that region, but then there's some other region that is also like important for subjective experience that you didn't measure, and who knows, right? There's a lot that you could be doing wrong, but that's not even about the basic conceptual mistake that I think she's making.
Yeah, like you said, this was already known that a lot of the same stimuli will produce in different people similar structural brain activity. Yeah, so that the idea that this is going to solve the problem of like how we know if that you're red and my red, no, of course not.
You know, yeah. So I had pulled up the paper and I just found this in the discussion because this is, I think, shows that it's Sabine, whatever her name is, that it's her issue interpreting, because the authors say, as we emphasize in the introduction, the structural correspondence evaluated by our unsupervised approach are not direct evidence that different people have the same subjective experiences. Rather, it should be considered as one of the necessary conditions for different people to have the same subjective experience.
Right.
So, like, they're not even claiming this.
Yeah, no, they're not. And of course not, right?
Of course.
They're not like, it's not even clear what the study is showing, though. If they're not going to claim that, I guess they're just claiming that colors inspire the same brain activity in different people unless they're colorblind. But like, you know, is that surprising that like...
I mean, yeah, I think that the paper might be doing something slightly more interesting by looking at these different like a whole array of colors and looking at overall patterns in like the structure of how we view colors. So like, I think there probably is something there that's like new to maybe the neuroscience of vision, but it's not whatever she's saying it is.
Right. All right.
This experiment is part of a broader shift in how we think about consciousness and qualia. It's a move away from philosophy to something that can be scientifically measured, quantified, and understood.
Okay, wait. Okay, so this is the part that I completely don't understand, where they say it's a part of a general trend, this study, in the moving away from philosophy into something that can be measured, quantified, and understood. And what's on the screen as she's saying this is a man delivering a package, like a light-skinned black man delivering a package to a white man. What is meant by this?
If you don't understand the symbolism.
The man is handing qualia to the scientist.
To the scientist.
The philosopher.
Yeah. Science is opening the door.
Right.
And qualia are being delivered to the scientist.
Okay, then we're going to get another study now.
In another recent study, the neuroscientist Anil Seth and co-authors have proposed a mathematical framework for consciousness in general and qualia in particular. They propose that subjective experience comes from our brains trying to constantly make predictions about what it expects to perceive based on past experiences. Then it compares these predictions to the actual sensory input. When there's a difference, the brain updates its model to better match reality.
Right. Okay. So now, for one, nobody ever claimed that subjective experiences weren't generated by the brain. Like, I think that's just absolutely ridiculous.
The problem is how that happens and how to even explain how it happens. Right.
And it seems to just add so much confusion to say that you thought qualia were this subjective characteristic of what it's like to see something, but it's this Bayesian prediction. I don't understand what that even.
Right. No. It has nothing to do with your phenomenology, what you perceive subjectively, what it's like to be you at that time. It's actually just a prediction of, what does that mean?
Yeah. One of the top comments is, unfortunately, this feels to me like, quote, we are finally able to measure qualia by changing the definition of qualia.
Yeah. And what would the definition be? Brain patterns, I guess?
Yes.
That's the whole point of qualia, is that it's actually trying to capture what the experience of it. It's that's the whole point of what qualia are.
You thought you had qualia, Sabine Hossenfelder, but they've slipped through your fingers once again.
Yes. The package must be returned. You've got to go to a Whole Foods and and
sign out your qualia.
Yeah, scan your code and give it back to the philosophers. Sorry, Sabine. All right, should we finish this off?
Yeah.
In this description, qualia are the key elements of this predictive algorithm, those experiences that are particularly versatile at describing sensory input, like color, for example, or the orientation of your body standing upright or hanging upside down from a cave. Seth and his colleagues argue that if we understand how this prediction and correction process works, we might be able to map subjective experiences, or qualia, in the same way the recent study mapped color experiences.
Okay, so she describes this paper on Bayesian prediction and again makes a very confusing sort of claim that, I don't know, I doubt is in the original paper, that the key to understanding qualia is just understanding this predictive process, which makes no sense to me.
You can map it
somehow. You can map them, yeah.
Which is just so bizarre.
And it's not just academic curiosity. There's even an institute dedicated to this very question. It's called the Qualia Research Institute, and their goal is to create a precise mathematical framework for understanding subjective experience.
It's wait, how is that moving beyond academic curiosity? Is that it's an institute? It's not just...
It's true.
It doesn't make any sense. It just feels...
Yeah. It's an
not
actual institute. It's not just a bunch of academics
so
misunderstanding the problem.
Right.
They want to map the state space of consciousness. That is, they want to understand the landscape of experience.
Okay, wait. This is now just peeled off into pure incoherence. These are just words, at this point. They're not sentences.
She's saying, no, there's a new institute that wants to study consciousness. And by that, I mean, they want to study consciousness.
The state space of consciousness. That is, they want to understand the landscape of experience. I mean, what do you think of that, philosophers?
Well, philosophers are coming around to it.
Even philosophers are coming around to the idea that maybe, just maybe, subjective experiences aren't as philosophical as they once thought.
What? Again, what does that mean?
What does that mean?
That subjective experiences aren't philosophical.
Maybe.
I guess I don't, some subjective experiences are philosophical, the ones where I'm philosophizing, but others are when I'm subjective experience of taking a piss is not philosophical. I didn't once think
it's more artistic, really.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
In fact, there's a new book called The Metaphysics of Color from two philosophers that make a surprising argument. Colors are real.
And here is where, to me, it's just okay.
What are we doing?
Just I think those philosophers would be shocked to see their book being discussed like this. But clearly, she has no understanding of what philosophers mean when they would say something like colors are real.
Yeah.
Like, I don't think it lines up with what she thinks. Like, they're not like in a groundbreaking way saying like, you know what? Philosophizing about this was wrong. They're real. Like, why don't we just study them?
This last neuroscience study convinced me. I thought colors were imaginary. I thought they were figments of my imagination or myth or, religion, but they're actually real. Yeah, so for my familiarity with this debate, it has nothing to do with neuroscience. It's pure conceptual analysis, and one of those where you're pretty sure it's a pseudo problem, but you're not curious enough to dive in to confirm that.
Right. Yeah.
We argue that there is no good reason to think that colors are less objective than, say, temperature.
There's also weird applause afterwards.
Dude, I know, after the guy says that maybe they're as objective as temperature, which for sure he doesn't mean anything about what she's saying.
What does all of this mean? If these researchers are right, then we might be on the edge of a new way to understand how experience happens and eventually also how to create it. Because imagine how amazing it'd be if you could share experiences with other people.
Isn't that what we do all the time?
I'm watching a movie with Eliza. Are we not sharing that experience together?
How can you ever know whether her subjective experience is the same as yours?
I think what she's saying is I'll get plugged into some brain that is hooked up to Eliza's brain, and then I will actually see it as Eliza or something like that, with whatever thoughts she's having in her head or whatever impressions. Yeah, maybe.
It's like a Black Mirror where there's a doctor who diagnoses people by getting into such a machine and figuring out where their pain is and then diagnosing them. Yeah.
What do you think the position that the old dumb philosophers were clinging to before these new philosophers finally realized colors are real?
Dude,
who thought is it that colors are secondary properties? Is it that view? Is it
right? Is it they're arguing that now they're primary?
Are there skeptics about color that think there are no colors?
I would have thought it was something like that, primary or secondary properties. It turns out that color is more whatever, solidity
than it is whatever, taste.
Yeah, taste. But I have no idea.
But I think she thinks what they're saying is it's something that can be objectively measured and it's a proper thing for science to weigh in on. And it's not subjective in the sense that we can't study it because how can we know? It's all just a matter of individual experience. So I think that's what she means. But again, nothing that they're doing has any bearing on that debate.
No, because also we've been able to measure colors. Whatever. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay. Okay, Sabine. This reminds me of that Neil deGrasse Tyson rationalia thing a little bit, just breathtaking, naivete about what the actual debate is and how far it's advanced.
It's weird. It's willful. I don't care at all if a scientist doesn't want to think about philosophical problems or if they think it's bullshit to talk about the hard problem of consciousness. That's fine. Whatever. I would understand it.
I could even have some sympathy.
Yeah. But then to weirdly say, we've solved this problem. You hear people do this for free will a lot too.
Yes, always.
And it's this itch where they've had this career where they've successfully generated scientific knowledge, and they think, why don't I turn my tools, my amazing cognitive tools, into one of these things that people have been debating for 500 years.
Or 2,500 years.
2,500 years. And then just read maybe the Stanford Encyclopedia entry and not understand it. And then
decide you've solved it. I feel like this one takes it to a new level. It really doesn't attempt to address a single thing that is, at the heart of the debate that she thinks she's cracked. There's not a single thing that is addressed. There are words that are used and papers that are referred to, what is it like to be a bat? But literally, none of the actual arguments are addressed in any way because they couldn't be by the work that she's talking about.
It's one of the most inelegant hand waves too, because she doesn't even really it's 3 parts to this argument that she's making that don't seem to really be connected in any way. There's the paper on color, there's the paper on predictive processing, and then there's these metaphysics guys on the metaphysics.
Yeah.
It's I actually am convinced that this was a ChatGPT script. I'm convinced. I didn't see it before when I watched it on my own, but in talking about it, this just has the flavor of
like a bullshit,
a very shallow, yeah.
Well, then I'm less worried about ChatGPT, taking over the world, killing us all. But if it weren't for the effective altruists who were marshaling all the resources to stop them. All right. Better luck next time, Sabine Hassenfelder. But I'm still with Nagel on this one.
I stand with Nagel.
All right. We'll be right back to talk about Borges and his essay, A New Refutation of Time.
I'm going to make a video where I say that this Borges' skepticism of time has just been disproven because, we can measure time. Scientists for the first time. Welcome back to Very Bad Wizards. This is David from the future after we recorded this episode, and in which I'm currently sick. So I apologize for the way my voice sounds, but it is that time of the episode where we want to take a moment and thank you for everything. All of the support that you give us, we really appreciate it. We wouldn't be doing this without you, and I'll never get tired of saying that. If you want to reach out to us, you can do so very easily. You can email us at verybadwizards@gmail.com, or you can tweet or blue sky us at Tamler or at Peas or at Very Bad Wizards. You can engage in conversations with your fellow listeners by going to reddit.com/r/verybadwizards. You can follow us on Instagram at Very Bad Wizards, and you can, if you find it in your heart, give us nice reviews on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. We appreciate that very much. And at this point, I will say that we just finished uploading our episodes to YouTube podcasts. So we currently now exist in YouTube, save for a few episodes that have copyright strikes because of either movie quotes or because of samples I've used in my beats. So they're almost all there. But it is interesting to find out that the YouTube algorithm is keeping track of the samples that I use. If you want to support us in more tangible ways, you can go to our support page on our website, and you can find the links to buying swag, making donations on PayPal, one-time or recurring. And you can join our growing, lovely Patreon community. And if you do that, you will get something back for your generous support. We have, of course, the most basic tier. If you just want to show us some support and get a back catalog that's full of ad-free episodes, and get some of my beat compilations, you can do that for only $2 a month. If you want access to all of the bonus content, so to unlock hundreds of hours of bonus content, including our Deadwood podcast, The Ambulators, conversations about random movies, TV shows, top 5 character episodes, our series with Paul on Severance. You can get all of that at $5 and up per month. At $10 and up per month, you can get all of that. Get access to our 5-part Brothers Karamazov series. Get some of my intro psych videos and some of Tamler's Plato lectures. And you also get the ability to vote on an episode topic. As you may be aware, if you're a Patreon member already, we had an exciting bracket where we've finally narrowed down the winner for this year. And finally, at the $20 and up tier, you get everything that I just mentioned, but you also get to ask us a question every month for our monthly Ask Us Anything. And at the bonus tier, you get to listen to those. But at the $20 tier, you get to ask them, and you get to see our answers awkwardly on video. So thank you once again to everybody for all of your support. It means a lot to us. And, we're doing this for year 13, and as long as we keep getting your support, there's no end in sight. Thanks. All right, now on to our main topic, Borges' A New Refutation of Time. So this is actually two articles that Borges published separately, one in 1944 and the other one in 1946, that were combined in his collection Labyrinths in 1962, and he added a little prologue. And what Borges is trying to do is, starting with the philosophy of Berkeleyan idealism, taking that, the sort of denial that the objective world exists outside of perception, adding to it the kind of Humean skepticism about identity, saying that this notion of self is largely illusory, it's just bundles of perceptions. He argues, well, can't we then say the same of time? Because after all, time is represented in consciousness and could be an illusion just as the objective world or the subjective experience of self is. So he takes this to be refuting the notion of time as we understand it and say, hey, maybe time doesn't really exist in the way that we thought it did.
Yeah. Two things I would just add. There is also, as part of the argument, this idea of the identity of indiscernibles, like a Leibniz principle that if any two substances have the same properties in every single way, then they must be the same. They must be identical. I guess like the two brains in seeing color.
Right. That's right.
It's like she should have used her fellow countryman's famous principle of indiscernibles. But anyway, in both versions of the essay that he presents, that plays a role because if we can conceive, I guess, of two moments of experience being identical in every way, then that brings down the whole illusion that it's all one continuous time.
Yeah.
And the relation of that to the idealist arguments is not a connection that I have yet been able to make.
Right. There's a lot of reliance on these experiences and examples that he uses about experiences being identical that we can get into.
But they're very much not identical, which is
because they're not identical,
Yeah.
sort of, even on his own admission. But they're cool. I mean, they're cool.
Well, yeah, that was the other thing I wanted to ask you. So he's presenting two versions of them. He seems to hold the argument at some kind of ironic distance too, and
Yeah.
especially at the end of the second version of this essay, it arrives. I thought it may be a kind of a Humean. We can't really believe this.
Totally. I'm glad we prepared to do this unwittingly by doing the Hume last time.
Yeah.
So immediately he says, this is an argument that I don't actually believe, at the beginning, and then launches into it so much that I forget by the time I'm done that it was something that he wasn't actually explicitly endorsing. He also says, I think nicely, that he's aware that by calling it a new refutation of time, that he's being contradictory because the notion of new requires time.
Right. You can't have a new or an old anything. That wouldn't make sense if all time is an illusion. Before diving into his particular arguments, I guess, what does the conclusion that time is an illusion mean for him and for you?
In reading this, obviously it's a laid out set of arguments, where he covers philosophy, Schopenhauer and Hume and whatever. But I couldn't help but think that this is a vibe-based argument. And he says at the beginning that this argument is present in all of his writing, just sort of not explicit. And it does feel like saying that time is an illusion is a way of dealing with the weirdness that is time and trying to understand what it means to say that something is in the past or that it will be in the future, when in reality, only ever being to live in the present feels odd. It just feels like a trick of something that's happening. And so I think that he's sort of taking this feel to its logical conclusion by saying that it doesn't exist. But I also wasn't sure what it means to deny the existence of time, because one way to deny the existence of time seems ridiculous, which it would be to say, well, everything happens all at once, which that can't be. Like something has to be occurring for different things to even happen. Even in the moments that he describes, the subjective moments that are repeated, like there's a succession of events. Like it seems weird to deny it all.
But I think what he would say is it appears to be a succession of events.
Yeah.
But that is exactly, that appearance is the illusion. Yeah. And so trying to just pin down what that means, like there are times where he says every moment is autonomous. So our moments aren't connected in any way. So in the same way, like Hume could skeptically deny causation and just call these things a constant conjunction of events. You might think time is like that too. And so that's one way of understanding it is the moment I'm experiencing right now, if I really interrogate it, has no connection to any part of the past. That's all my imagination in the present moment, and no connection to the future, which is also my projection and my imagination. And so really what happens is a spontaneous eruption of now, just constantly.
Yeah. I like that. The spontaneous eruption of now. That's great. Yeah. So we were talking about these sections where we think that the argument is made as clear as it is anywhere in these two articles. And in one paragraph, he says, I deny in a large number of instances the existence of succession. I deny in a large number of instances simultaneity as well. The lover who thinks, while I was so happy thinking about the faithfulness of my beloved, she was busy deceiving me, is deceiving himself. If every state in which we live is absolute, that happiness was not concurrent with that betrayal. And then he goes on to say what you were quoting earlier, every instant is autonomous. Not vengeance, nor pardon, nor jails, nor even oblivion can modify the invulnerable past. No less vain to my mind are hope and fear, for they always refer to future events, that is, to events which will not happen to us, who are the diminutive present. They tell me that the present, the specious present of the psychologists, lasts between several seconds and the smallest fraction of a second, which is also how long the history of the universe lasts. There's a lot there, yeah.
Yeah, and then in the second essay refers to the Buddhist idea of the universe just recreating itself over and over again.
Yeah.
But it's hard to even talk about these things, like even just saying over and over again or constantly seems to presume some kind of time. So I think maybe one problem that we are having is language kind of presupposes time.
Yeah. And he says all language is of a successive nature. It does not lend itself to reasoning on eternal, intemporal matters.
Yes, exactly. All right. Should we try to pin down as much as we can how the argument works?
Yeah. It's a nice little introduction to idealism. He presents the arguments of Berkeley, I think, nicely, denying that there is any external world. And I like the thought that Berkeley had that, look, this thing, like I'm looking at my laptop, this thing exists in my perception. To say that it also has to exist in some other way, like in the objective external world, is kind of being redundant. Like the universe doesn't need to create two versions of the laptop. And then, Berkeley thought, well, you might say when you turn around, well, if I leave this room, my laptop just ceases to exist. But don't worry, God is always watching.
Right, that's his little, his cop out there. But also says, I think when he's being a little more consistent, it's like in response to an objection, well, my laptop, like, are you saying my laptop isn't in that room just because I can't see it? It's like, no, you talking about the laptop, you imagining the laptop over there is the perception, and that's all you need to actually posit exists using just a kind of parsimony principle. And so Hume, where Berkeley thought that there still was a self to whom all these perceptions were happening that was separate from those perceptions. So there's the experiences that we're having, the conscious experiences, and then there's a perceiver of a conscious experience. Hume just did away with that and said there's just the experiences. And this is where Hume gets very Buddhist. They, like, just all we know are there are thoughts and there are experiences. But what those experiences can't, if we really interrogate it closely, establish is that there is this self that is having those experiences. And in that sense, he goes, and we talked a little bit about this last time, but not too much. Though the I think, therefore I am, Hume says, as Borges points out, and I think Borges agrees with Hume on this, that's invalid because it posits this I that's thinking when all we know is thoughts are occurring. We don't know that there is an I having the thoughts.
Yeah, but then he says, but like both of these guys seemed to believe that time was a thing.
Yes.
Like that the passage of time was real.
He says, both men affirmed the existence of time. For Berkeley, it is the succession of ideas in my mind, flowing uniformly and participated in by all beings. For Hume, it is a succession of indivisible moments.
Yeah.
And here's where he gets into the Huck Finn example.
Yeah, okay. So this is the part where I was like, okay. So the step that the move that he makes, I guess you can have an argument that using the sort of reasoning of idealism and sort of coming to the belief that the external world doesn't really exist, or like Hume, that the self doesn't really exist, he thinks that it is like, it almost just follows, like it's something that they're actively working against to not also then embrace the notion that time doesn't exist. And I guess like it feels like, yeah, you could say, well, what is it that makes you keep holding on to time? If you've accepted that the external world isn't real, why not accept that time isn't real either? But that's not a very tight argument.
No,
Yeah.
right. And it's not the only thing he gives, but that is the idea. Like once you accept these idealist premises and skepticism about the self, then if you don't also accept skepticism about time, you're being like Berkeley. You're not taking your argument to its logical conclusions. But it's in making that connection, right? So he says, if we deny matter and spirit, which are continuities, and if we also deny space, I do not know what right we have to the continuity that is time. And so he says, let us imagine a present moment, anyone at all. A night on the Mississippi, Huckleberry Finn wakes up. The raft, lost in the shadows of twilight, continues downstream. It may be a bit cold. Huckleberry Finn recognizes the soft, ceaseless sound of the water. Negligently, he opens his eyes. He sees an indefinite number of stars, a nebulous line of trees. Then he sinks into a sleep without memories, as into dark waters. Metaphysical idealism declares that to add to the river and the riverbank perceived by Huck the notion of yet another substantive river with another substantive riverbank, to add to these perceptions a material substance is precarious and vain. In my eyes, it's no less unjustifiable to add chronological precision. For instance, the fact that the above-mentioned event should have taken place on the night of June 7th, 1849, between 4:10 and 4:11. Yeah, here's where I get a little bit, I'm back being confused as to what denial of time really entails. Like, what does it mean exactly?
Yeah, I don't know.
It's something about the succession. I guess that one follows the other in this continuous...
Yeah, two things, succession and coexistence.
Right.
So he denies both of them, that two things happen at the same time and that things happen after each other. But again, when he says that the lover was wrong to think that when he was faithful, his wife was deceiving him.
The lover who thinks, while I was so happy thinking about the faithfulness of my beloved, she was busy deceiving me, is deceiving himself. If every state in which we live is absolute, that happiness was not concurrent with that betrayal. The discovery of that betrayal is merely one more state, incapable of modifying previous states, though not incapable of modifying their recollection. Yeah, it's slipping.
Like, again, I get the vibe. Like, if existence is but moments that are sort of these indivisible, non-causing things, like my present right now and your present right now have no relation to each other.
Right.
And to say that they are related to each other by saying they both occurred at this specific time is just to sort of reify this notion of time.
So if I'm thinking right now as we're recording, Trixie is downstairs and lying on the couch, the idea that those two things are happening at the same time is not necessary. It's one of those things that, we can parsimoniously cut out. All that is there right now is me having the thought that Trixie is currently lying down, but that's its own moment. It doesn't have any objective correlate.
Right. And whatever phenomenology Trixie is experiencing, it doesn't make sense to relate hers and yours to this third thing that we call time.
That's a good way of putting it.
Yeah.
Like there are just these two experiences, if presumably she's having an experience, although really all I know is that's my imagination of her having an experience.
It is so tricky to talk about time.
In a way that it's
Yeah.
not as much to talk about like Berkeleyan idealism.
Yeah, it's very weird.
I mean, the self is an interesting kind of intermediary, but I feel like as someone who really spends a lot of time trying to wrestle with the idea that the self is an illusion and what that means, I still feel like it's a little more tractable than time is an illusion.
Well, in his conclusion, maybe we'll get to the fact that he has troubles with it as well. This is a sort of aside, but like I was saying before, I get the vibe of thinking that time is so weird.
Yeah.
And you could think that one way to approach this is to say, well, subjective experiences of time are interesting and they differ in ways that doesn't track with objective measures of time, so much so that it seems as if our mind is bringing a lot to the table. Or, I remember one of the first times I ever got high, I was watching something and I thought the commercials lasted forever.
Yeah, that's a very common thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like you almost got the sense that this moment has existed forever and will forever exist. Like I am sitting in this moment that is the universe's television commercials.
You must have had some good shit then.
I was in Northern California.
Yeah, okay.
And so there are, all kinds of examples of when time seems to go faster and slower that doesn't track necessarily with the amount of time, like watching a microwave count down 30 seconds feels like it takes forever. So you could say like, oh, clearly our minds are bringing a lot to this that seems to organize our experience in a way that whatever objective time is seems less important than the subjective time. And you could get that weirdness and say, this is why I doubt anything like the realness of time or the sharedness of time.
But one way of understanding what you're talking about is, in the same way that like our perception can be altered in all sorts of interesting ways. And so like with the visual illusion, I don't deny the fact, like, the existence of lines just because I perceive them as different lengths or, under certain conditions.
Yeah.
So time is also something that it exists, but it's not often reliably tracked by the individual because, like you say, we're importing our own things or whatever chemical substances we're on. Or, like there's so many things that seem like they take forever and so many things that seem like when I'm waiting in line, it feels like, I'm doing it forever at a supermarket sometimes. And, but that same 5 minutes can fly by in other contexts. But even talking about that and saying that you can make this mistake or, have these different experiences does presume maybe some kind of objective correlate. But I guess the point is, no, it doesn't. In the same way that like you don't have to posit an external world in addition to the experiences that you're having, you probably don't have to posit objective time, just the experience of time.
And in the Hume chapter in the Enquiry that we read, he does start off by saying like, look, there's this really simple way in which we can doubt the existence of the external world. And he does exactly what you say, right? Like brings up visual illusions and various ways in which we know our perception differs. So I get why Borges would be like, so why doesn't he go, why doesn't he take that extra step and say time is like that as well?
Yeah. Because I think it's a more radical conclusion in that sense.
Yeah.
I think he's really saying something about how time, these moments are not connected with each other in the way that we think. Yeah. We think the past influences the future, and that's why we worry about the future, because we imagine that what we do now will affect what happens in the future. No, there's just these present moments, which often include us imagining this thing called the future or remembering this thing called the past. But really, there's just that present moment.
So this is where maybe it makes sense to bring up the examples that he then tries to generate of identical experiences or what, quote unquote identical experiences, where he gives examples of having a moment that seemed like exactly the same moment as one he had 30 years ago.
Yeah. Going into his old neighborhood.
Yeah. Right. By the way, I love the honeysuckle. It reminded me of Double Indemnity.
Yeah.
It's like 2 honeysuckle references in a week.
Great episode, by the way. Join our Patreon and you can listen to it.
Yeah. So he can say like this moment exists independent of anything called time. And I have experienced it just because I experienced it one time in 1930 and one time in 1950 or whatever. that's just sort of like irrelevant. It was the same moment that this bundle of perceptions that is me experienced.
Yeah, which is weird because it couldn't be exactly the same experience.
I know.
And the whole point of the principle of indiscernibles, the identity of indiscernibles, is that they're literally indiscernible, right? If you just have a tiny little difference, then they can be different things.
By the way, so in this discussion now where he starts giving examples of repetitions in his life, which says abound, he says, I never passed by this Recoleta cemetery without having this same memory. And then he remembers that he's remembered the same thing before. And in this neighborhood thing that you were talking about, I love this quote. He says, I cannot stroll around the outskirts of my neighborhood in the solitude of night without thinking that night is pleasing to us because, like memory, it erases idle details. I love that. It's so good. It's exactly what the point he made in Funes, the memoir.
What Funes couldn't do. He lacked that night quality.
But then I think that when he actually brings up Heraclitus's you cannot step into the same river twice, which made me think, well, doesn't that mean that every experience is unique?
Yeah, so he says we can postulate in the mind of an individual or of two individuals who do not know each other, but in whom the same process is operative, two identical moments. Once this identity is postulated, we may ask, are not these identical moments the same moment? Are the enthusiasts who devote themselves to a line of Shakespeare not literally Shakespeare? This is where it's like, I don't get it there. Like, is it just that it's conceivable that this could happen? That's enough to just take down time? Or
this is where it starts, where you start seeing threads of this throughout his writing, where he's saying something like, he's expounding on in his author of the Quixote, where he's saying Pierre Menard decided to put himself through all of the things that Cervantes went through in order to produce the same exact thing. So he's saying, like, it seems conceivable that he's experiencing the same moments that Cervantes experienced.
Well, no. I think that's not what Pierre Menard does, just as a exegetical Pierre Menard.
What do you mean? Does Pierre Menard tries to live have all the same experiences that Cervantes had?
He wants to write the Quixote as Pierre Menard. He explicitly doesn't try to live like Cervantes. He doesn't think that's interesting. The interesting thing would be if he, Pierre Menard, with his life, also wrote the Quixote. And so to get himself to still write it, but not as Cervantes. That's my memory.
Yeah. Then I could be wrong. But I guess it doesn't matter so much for then this, which is that in writing the Quixote, like, he thinks he's having the same experience as Cervantes. At least that's what I'm getting from the devoting yourself to a line of Shakespeare, not literally being Shakespeare. There's no self to speak of, so it's hard to say like what this moment is. But you're like sharing, like, if we've both had an experience that is so similar of walking down this street and having this thought or whatever, what sense does it make to say that they are two different moments? Especially when you say, if you deny that, well, obviously one is Tamler having the moment and one is David having the moment. You've denied Tamler and David as being things.
Right. There's right now two like incompatible memories of having read Pierre Menard and thinking about like that text. That's all you can posit. And you can't posit anything about the time of those things. There's just these two different streams of experience. But, even saying a stream of experience, a succession of impressions about those ideas in Pierre Menard, like all that, it just like seems to presuppose, I guess it presupposes subjectively experienced time, at least for the moment, but I guess it doesn't presuppose absolute time that is like independent of you and I, whatever we are doing as we talk right now.
Right. That's what gets tricky for me, which is, how do you make sense of a moment within that moment? Like saying, and then I walked through my neighborhood and then I had the thought.
Right.
And then,
Yeah.
You're right about the Quixote or whatever. Like, Pierre Menard is weirdly trying to live his life, I think, in such a way that he could produce authentically the Quixote. But obviously he can't live the same life as somebody in whatever the 1400s.
And I remember this line where he says, like, he could like try to live as much as possible like that, but he's like, that's less interesting than.
Yes, that's right. Yeah, you're totally right. Yeah. So maybe Borges says, like, we just can't make sense of even the events that make up a moment without relying on time, but that's just like, that's our problem. That's the problem of language. That's the problem of whatever. This is where I thought that he would bring in something like Kant's transcendental idealism, where he could say, well, like our mind just brings to the world like a set of tools for understanding the world, right? Like this innate concept of time, we need it to make sense of whatever it is that true reality is. But it's not true reality. We just can't experience a moment in its purest form in the same way that we can't experience a vase in front of us in its pure form. It's all filtered through some set of mental processes.
And categories, like mental structures that like help us. So like for Kant, space was one, time was one, like Euclidean space of some kind. And these were ways for us to make sense of the noumena, which are not something we have access to. It has to be interpreted through these categories that we project onto it. Yeah. And like Kant might well never have existed. And, he like it's weird, and Hegel too. And I don't know why. Like he hates Germans, maybe.
And
he quotes Schopenhauer, but not flatteringly, at least in the first essay.
Yeah, I love, by the way, the stray that he shoots at Schopenhauer, where he kind of mocks him for not being able to like go full tilt on idealism by saying that the hands.
It's very much quote? An anti-Sabine point that Borges is making. So Schopenhauer says all these experiences are just representations of the brain. Like and I don't know to what extent this is a fair criticism. And he's like, you can't posit the brain either. Like the brain is just an idea. And Berkeley even said that, you dumbass. That's basically what Borges says. Which is like, I think true. I just don't know if that's being fair to Schopenhauer. I think
he said that Schopenhauer caught his error in a subsequent paper.
So there's a Schopenhauer quote in the second essay, which he refers to approvingly. He says, via the dialectic of Berkeley and Hume, I have arrived at Schopenhauer's dictum. The form of the appearance of the will is only the present, not the past or the future. The latter do not exist except in the concept and by the linking of the consciousness. No man has ever lived in the past, and none will ever live in the future. The present alone is the form of all life and is a possession that no misfortune can take away. We might compare time to an infinitely revolving circle. The half that is always sinking would be the past. That which is always rising would be the future. But the indivisible point at the top, which the tangent touches, would be the present. Motionless like the tangent, that extensionless present marks the point of contact of the object whose form is time with the subject, which has no form because it does not belong to the knowable, but is the precondition of all knowledge.
I mean, I love that. Like, I do get this feeling like there is nothing real about the past or the future. It is, at least for my intuition, not a metaphysical category that makes any sense. And that's why time travel movies, I've always thought, are weird in that they posit somehow that the past is somewhere. It's like a thing that is to be found that you could just drop into.
So you are like a time skeptic at heart. Like, just this idea that there is the past as this real existence. But your skepticism isn't the we could have been born 1 second ago kind of skepticism, right?
No, it's the feeling that I think it feels like it might be Buddhist to me, which is that there is nothing real except for the present. Right. And given that the past only exists in some form in my memory, almost to the point that like the only reality that the past has to me is a shared one, where I've thought to myself, if somebody else can talk to me about the memory that we had together, then it feels real. If nobody else remembers it, it's sort of like lost this reality in some way.
But even the memory is only real in the present as you're sharing and talking about it.
As you're sharing it. That's right. Yeah. That's right. And it feels like so weird to think that there was such a thing. Is kind of like the feeling that you get about identity, where it's like, does it make sense to say that 10-year-old David was me?
Yeah.
Like, you get to this like, well, that's weird. I sometimes think, does it make sense to say that the past exists? Like, there's no way that you could ever measure it or know it or touch it or experience it again.
Or That's what philosophers thought until
Until they invented the clock.
latest YouTube video by Sabine Hossenbender.
Turns out that in hours and seconds and minutes, we can rewind this video and you'll be visiting the... I've had this crazy thought, by the way, which is, what are the odds that we're living in the present? You know, like doesn't it seem like a crazy odds that we'd be existing in the present?
Are you on some of that good shit right now?
I know, it seems like such a high thought, but I remember having it before.
What do you mean the
and
odds
thinking,
of
like,
just us being alive at this particular time? Is that what you mean?
In the present, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's...
Not at this particular time in like the time wheel sense, like in the present, not like as in this date, but as in like the actual present, the occurring moment that is the present.
What are the odds that what?
That we're existing in the present moment.
Aren't they
They're either
100%?
100%,
Yeah.
or they're like paltry, like infinitesimally small. Like I can't decide. It's either one or the other.
Wait, how could it be small?
Because there are so many people that are not existing in the present.
Yeah, it's like that joke
I
that
don't know.
my dad loved of the two Jewish guys on a park bench. You know, God, life is so terrible. Sometimes I think it would have been better never to have been born at all. And the other guy says, yeah, but who has such a luck? Maybe 1 in 1,000?
I love that joke. I tell ever since you told it to me, I tell it all the time.
So can we get to the Zhuangzi, which he uses as part of his illustration of idealism, but also, I think, to connect it to that other part of the argument, the identity of indiscernibles, which, you know, we're still, I think, a little bit struggling with. But so he says, the famous example from Zhuangzi, who was a Taoist philosopher from around the 4th century BC, I believe. So he said, Zhuangzi dreamed he was a butterfly, and when he awoke, he was not sure whether he was a man who had dreamed he was a butterfly or a butterfly who dreamed he was a man. And he says, let us not consider the awakening, but the moment of the dream itself, or one of its moments. I dreamed I was a butterfly fluttering through the air, knowing nothing at all of Zhuangzi. Zhu, says the ancient text. We shall never know whether Zhuangzi saw a garden over which he seemed to fly, or a moving yellow triangle, which was doubtless himself. So I guess the question there is, did he actually see himself like from the perspective of like behind the eyes, I guess, of a butterfly? Or did he just see the butterfly but think that's me?
Yeah, right.
But according to Berkeley, at the moment, the body of Zhuangzi did not exist, nor did the dark bedroom in which he was dreaming, save maybe as a perception in the mind of God. Hume simplifies what happened even more. At that moment, the spirit of Zhuangzi did not exist. All that existed were the colors of the dreams and the certainty of his being a butterfly. So basically, at that point, he is a butterfly. There is no Zhuangzi. There's just this impression of being a butterfly flying. He existed as a momentary term in the bundle or collection of different perceptions, which constituted some 4 centuries before Christ, the mind of Zhuangzi. There is no other reality for idealism than mental processes. With space and self abolished, how can we link those dreaming moments to his waking moments in the feudal age of Chinese history? And he notes that this is proverbial in China. Everyone knows the story about Zhuangzi. Let us imagine that by a not impossible chance, this dream repeats exactly the dream of the master. Having postulated such an identity, we may well ask, are those coinciding moments identical? Is not one single repeated term enough to disrupt and confound the history of the world to reveal that there is no such history? Okay, I feel like this is actually more helpful to me in understanding this. Because, first of all, it does seem more possible that two people could have the same dream, right?
Yeah.
You know, unlike Borges at 20 versus Borges at 50 having the same conscious experience walking through the neighborhood. And I guess the point is there, well, if that's true, then those are just the same moment, right? Like, we shouldn't say, oh, this one happened before that one. There is no before or after. There's just those two moments that are the same. There's not even two moments. It's the same one.
Right. Like, on what grounds can you distinguish these if you can't distinguish them by anything experiential? Yeah. it's still like I'm still having trouble grokking the duplication of moments. Like maybe I'm just resisting somehow the belief that you can have two identical moments.
But I think so. When he says, "Is not one single repeated term enough to disrupt and confound the history of the world to reveal that there's no such history?" The whole point, I guess, of time is that no moment in the future can be the same as the moment in the past, I guess.
Yeah.
Although, like there is these kind of Hindu philosophies that it's all this cycle and there's, these like series of like hundreds of years that then end up kind of repeating themselves.
Yeah. But that seems like it has to have some notion of time.
Yeah. Yeah. That seems like they have a notion of time, but also a notion of two moments being identical within that flow of time.
Yeah. I do love the quote from whatever this Buddhist treatise is, The Path to Purity. Strictly speaking, the life of a being lasts as long as an idea, just as a rolling carriage wheel touches the earth at only one point. So life lasts as long as a single idea. So yeah, connecting the two, like I guess like, yeah, if you have the same idea, I guess I'm getting it a little bit like if there is no other way to distinguish a moment other than saying it happened at time A versus it happened at time B, and by doing that, you're just presupposing the reality of time, like then that might undermine the whole notion of temporal separation or succession.
Yeah. And this idea that, the life of a being lasts as long as one idea, or other Buddhist texts say that the world is annihilated and resurges 6,500,000,000 times a day, that every man is an illusion vertiginously wrought by a series of solitary and momentary men. Like, that's great. And I can get that. Like, I'm not on the shit that you're on right now, but like this idea that like, this is all new. Every moment is its own thing. It's just spontaneously recreated. Like I said, or that spontaneous eruption of now is just constantly happening. And although it's hard to talk about without making it seem like, well, this now happened after that now, I think I can wrap my head around that idea that, well, they're not connected, though. And so to talk about them as one following the other, like you might as easily just say it's not one following the other, like one is below or side by side or whatever. They're just completely disconnected from each other. And there's not this time thing that connects them.
It's so funny as you're talking, I was just thinking about the work in linguistic kind of, or psycholinguistics that people have done on the fact that we use all these spatial metaphors for time, like you can't, it's like it being ahead or above or below or behind. Yeah.
Did we do an episode on that? I think we did. I think it was the metaphor. It's the metaphor episode where he talks about how our perception of time is influenced by spatial metaphors that we use.
Yeah. Was it
Lakoff?
Is this why, by the way, like from my understanding, the Buddhists are talking about living in the present? Is it because metaphysically, like, not that anything exists, I know, but like it exists more than anything else?
Yeah, it's the only thing that exists.
It's the only thing that exists. And you get this feeling when people are focused so much on the past or on the future that they're missing out on the only thing that is real.
Yeah. It's very tragic, actually.
The man of a past moment has lived, but he does not live, nor will he live. I'm continuing to quote The Path to Purity. Yeah. The man of a future moment will live, but he has not lived, nor does he now live. The man of the present moment lives, but he has not lived, nor will he live. So, yeah, it does feel like it goes hand in hand with the denial of the self.
Yeah. But, you could still have a denial of the self and just these stream of impressions that do follow each other. I guess what Hume is saying is you could have it, but there's no reason for us to postulate it. That is as unnecessary as postulating an external world or an independently existing self or perceiver. Okay, so you want to read the last paragraph?
Yeah, it's one of my favorite paragraphs in all of Borges. So he ends this and he says, and yet, which, by the way, in the Spanish version, he starts that paragraph with and yet in English.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting.
Yeah. To deny temporal succession, to deny the self, to deny the astronomical universe appear to be acts of desperation and are secret consolations. Our destiny, unlike the hell of Swedenborg and the hell of Tibetan mythology, is not terrifying because it is unreal. It is terrifying because it is irreversible and ironbound. Time is the substance of which I am made. Time is a river that sweeps me along, but I am the river. It is a tiger that mangles me, but I am the tiger. It is a fire that consumes me, but I am the fire. The world, unfortunately, is real. I, unfortunately, am Borges.
Yeah, it is the fire
So
that
good.
consumes me, but I am the fire reminded me a lot of Circular Ruins and what's going on
Yeah,
in that
totally.
story. But what is it, like, I'm not sure I fully get what he's saying where he says, time is a river that sweeps me along, but I am the river. Time is the
Yeah.
substance of which I am made. It is the tiger that mangles me, but I am the tiger. What's he saying there?
My sense is that he's saying again, time is not a thing external to me. Like the moments that have been Borges, they are still me. I don't know, actually. I don't know, because he's in this paragraph, he's sort of denying the skepticism about time. But I feel like I get that somehow the feeling that I am my own sort of succession through time makes sense to me. I've consumed previous Davids to be who I am. And at the end, I will have consumed myself.
But what does that mean to, because it's not, like you said, like he quotes Plutarch right before this saying, yesterday's man died in the man of today. Today's man dies in the man of tomorrow. But, the last paragraph is meant to go against that. So, like, I think we both got the vibe of it or the feel of it as very Humean, like, we can't actually, these arguments are just words that can make no real impression on us. Once we have a few beers at the pub and play backgammon, like we stop worrying about these things. They can't really affect our actions.
Yeah.
But, when I'm reading it this time, it seems like that's not exactly what he's saying, even though it has the feel of that. He's affirming a kind of realism that goes beyond just what we're conditioned to believe, like our psychology.
Yeah, right. It's like a more reflective one.
Yeah. But then at the same time, one in which we're bound to like everything in. Like time consumes me, but I am time. That makes me think, we're part of everything. Like these things are real, but like I can't separate time from me. Time ravages me, but it's also me that is time. Yeah, I guess I just I'm not sure. I don't know if I get it.
So you're right, aside from the poetic beauty, maybe it's so he's saying it might be nice to deny temporal succession, to deny the self, and to deny external reality. But the truth is, there is an I. Like that I exists. It exists in a time and it exists in a place. And I have to suffer through the fact that I, Borges, exist and I'm getting older. And yeah, time is existing, but like it still doesn't make sense to think of it as this thing that's external that's moving it around, because it is me who's getting older. It is me who's experiencing it all. And it is like I am
It's funny. You start, because he's such a great writer and evokes things, you start talking about it thinking that you understand it, and then realize like 3/4 of the way through, like you still haven't pinned it down. But I'll try to do that again. Like time is the substance of which I am made might be that like the I, like maybe the self is constituted by the reality of the self is only the reality of time.
The person moving through time, right? It's unlike contra Hume. We're not independent bundles. We are a thing and we are moving through time.
But we're also time.
But we're also time. Yeah.
Which is, that's the confusing thing. Because, when he says time is a river that sweeps me along, the river, that sounds very Humean and very Heraclitan and Buddhist.
Yeah.
But it doesn't seem like that's what he's saying.
Yeah, it is funny, that experience that the harder we squeeze, the more the sand falls out of our fingers. And so maybe we just accept the poetic truth that he's communicating and the beauty with which he's communicating it.
And the mystery and the puzzle.
And, the vibe that I get from this all is fundamentally like an ending. The world is real and I am Borges. It's something like the desperate feeling that unfortunately I'm the one who experiences all this. It will all begin with me and it will all end with me. So in some way, like it's me. It's just me who's going to live, breathe, and die as Borges.
Yeah. In some ways, it's the opposite of Hume. Like Hume would get really depressed and like have panic attacks about denying the self and some of his skeptical arguments when they went into radical a direction. Whereas Borges is saying, actually, these things are secret consolations.
Yeah, I love that.
And like, unfortunately, though, there's no way out of just the world being real and me being who I am getting older. It's like I can engage in these intellectual exercises, but the reality is still that I am getting older and I'm being mangled and I'm being consumed.
And that I am me,
me.
which is like a like kind of a sad way to end it. That I can't be someone else. I can't be a non-self.
Yeah.
I'm unfortunately me.
Well, Borges, there's better being you than most people, you know?
Yeah. I would even venture to say that at moments reading Borges, I am Borges.
Yeah, like the Shakespeare enthusiasts.
Exactly.
All right. Great stuff from Borges, as always.
Yeah. We should do more of his nonfiction.
I agree. All right. Join us next time on Very Bad Wizards.
The great and boss has spoken. Pay no attention to that man behind the curtain.
Who are you? Who are you? A very bad man.
I'm a very good man. Good man. They think deep thoughts, and with no more brains than you have. Pay no attention to that man. Anybody can have a brain.
You're a very bad man.
I'm a very good man. Just a very bad wizard.